For most people today, darkness is an inconvenience. You flip a switch, light floods the room, and the shadows disappear. But for thousands of years, night was something far more serious. It was a test. When the sun set and the forest began to whisper, every sound carried meaning, every rustle hinted at life or death. Most early travelers refused to move after sunset. The darkness swallowed landmarks, hid cliffs, and erased all sense of direction. But Native Americans didn't see night as the enemy. They saw it as a teacher. They studied it until it became familiar, until they could walk through complete blackness as confidently as others did in daylight. The night wasn't a threat to them, it was home. It started with the eyes, but vision was only part of the equation. You can't rely on sight alone when the moon hides behind clouds and every shadow looks the same. So tribes trained every sense they had to work together. Hunters learned to let their eyes relax, not to stare directly at one point, but to use the corners of their vision. Peripheral sight is far more sensitive in low light, and they understood this long before science ever explained why. When you stare straight ahead, your pupils constrict slightly, reducing night sensitivity. But by keeping their gaze soft, sweeping side to side, they caught the slightest movements. A leaf trembling, a distant silhouette shifting in the dark. Their eyes were constantly adjusting, always ready to catch the smallest change. They also knew that it takes time to see properly in the dark. Modern people ruin their night vision instantly by glancing at their phones or flashlights, but Native Americans would sit quietly before sunset, letting their eyes adjust slowly as the light faded. During hunts, warriors sometimes covered one eye before lighting a fire so that when they returned to darkness, one eye was already adapted. It was a simple but genius trick that allowed them to move between light and shadow seamlessly. That's the kind of practical intelligence we've lost, knowing how to work with darkness instead of fighting against it. Sound was another critical skill. Once light faded, hearing became the most powerful tool. The tribes could locate an animal or a stranger long before they saw it. They practiced something modern soldiers still use today, sound mapping. They'd sit still in total silence, identifying layers of noise, wind through leaves, water flowing, insects, birds, and the distinct rhythm of footsteps that didn't belong. When you know what the night normally sounds like, you can immediately tell when something changes. If the frogs stopped croaking or the crickets went silent for just a few seconds, everyone knew something was moving nearby. Their entire world became a living radar system. Smell played its part too. Campfires, sweat, even the scent of certain plants told them who or what had passed through an area. The air itself carried information. Hunters could tell when deer had recently crossed their path just by the faint musk in the breeze. Some tribes even trained dogs or wolves to signal when they caught unfamiliar scents, creating an early warning system that worked better than any alarm. It wasn't mystical. It was pattern recognition taken to a superhuman level, sharpened through years of observation and practice. Even skin could see in its own way. Warriors described feeling the air change when something moved behind them, the faint pressure of displacement, the soft vibration of steps through the ground. These weren't supernatural powers. They were refined sensitivity to the natural world. By walking barefoot, they could feel temperature changes in the soil, sensing open areas or water nearby. Every sense contributed to a complete picture of their surroundings, creating a form of awareness that didn't depend on light at all. Their relationship with darkness was deeply cultural too. Night wasn't just a time of fear, it was sacred. Ceremonies, storytelling, and spiritual rituals often took place under starlit skies. They believed the darkness revealed truths the daylight hid. While others hid from shadows, they listened to them. The stars guided navigation, but they also told stories about ancestors, spirits, and natural cycles. Some tribes mapped their territories by the constellations, memorizing routes through patterns in the sky that appeared only at certain seasons. To them, the night was full of life, the hum of insects, the rhythm of the wind, the whisper of spirits moving through trees. But mastering darkness wasn't just about sight or hearing, it was about calm. Panic destroys perception. The more you fear the night, the less you can see. Native hunters trained themselves to slow their breathing, lower their heart rate, and remain perfectly still for hours. That stillness wasn't just stealth, it was control. The body relaxed, the senses sharpened, and even the faintest movements became visible or audible. Their patience turned into a weapon. They could sit motionless while prey walked within arm's reach, unaware of the quiet figure watching from the shadows. They also used the moon strategically. Each phase brought its own purpose. Bright full moons were perfect for traveling or hunting at night. New moons, when the world was nearly black, were used for stealth missions or ambushes, when visibility worked in their favor. Tribes developed moon calendars that told them not only when to plant crops, but when to move, hunt, and fight. The sky wasn't just decoration, it was a clock, a compass, and a survival manual all at once. They read it like we read notifications on our phones. Even firelight had its own science. Too much light blinds you to what's beyond the glow. Too little and you risk predators approaching unseen. So fires were built low and shielded by rocks or hides, giving just enough illumination to work or cook while keeping most of the area dark. The outer ring of shadows was where they watched the world move. They controlled light rather than letting it control them. Modern people flood everything with brightness, but in doing so we lose contrast, depth, and awareness, the exact tools they mastered. When you think about it, these weren't primitive people stumbling through darkness. They were experts in sensory intelligence, years ahead of modern survivalists who still struggle without flashlights and night vision goggles. To them, seeing in the dark wasn't about having better eyes, it was about having a better mind, one trained to read the invisible. If you're still here and this story made you see the night a little differently, give it a like and subscribe. It helps bring more of these forgotten survival stories back to life. And tell me in the comments, would you survive one night in total darkness the way they did? When the sun vanished beyond the horizon, the world for most people turned into a wall of black uncertainty. But for Native Americans, night wasn't an obstacle, it was an open road. They moved quietly through forests, across plains, and along rivers guided by moonlight, starlight, and instinct. Traveling at night wasn't a desperate choice to avoid danger. It was strategy. The air was cooler, the predators easier to predict, and the silence gave them control. While settlers fumbled with torches that blinded them to everything beyond their glow, native scouts could cross entire valleys unseen. Their advantage came not from stronger eyes, but from a deep understanding of how the night itself moved. Movement began with silence. Every step mattered. They learned early that sound travels differently in darkness. Cool night air carries noise farther than daytime heat, so the softest snap of a twig could give away your position from hundreds of feet away. To counter this, they perfected the art of the fox walk, a method where the outer edge of the foot touches the ground first, followed by a slow, rolling step that spreads weight evenly. It wasn't just quiet, it was invisible. The step left barely a mark on soft soil, and to anyone listening, it was impossible to distinguish from the rustle of small animals. Warriors practiced for years to move in total silence, learning to glide rather than walk, to breathe with the rhythm of the forest rather than against it. Their pathfinding skills bordered on supernatural. In complete darkness, they could still navigate accurately using the landscape's memory stored in their minds. They remembered every slope, every crooked tree, every sound of flowing water. The forest was a living map and they knew its language. The feel of soil underfoot told them where they were: coarse grit near riverbanks, softer loam under pine cover, cracked earth on exposed ridges. Some trackers could tell exactly which valley they were in simply by the smell of the vegetation. They didn't need compasses or stars to know where they stood. The earth itself was their guide. But when stars were visible, they became the perfect celestial map. Tribes like the Pawnee, Lakota, and Navajo built entire navigation systems around constellations. Certain stars marked the direction of seasonal migration routes, while others signaled hunting grounds or approaching weather changes. When traveling long distances, they read the sky like we read a GPS, adjusting course by watching how specific stars moved relative to the horizon. To them, the Milky Way wasn't just decoration. It was the path of the spirits, a cosmic road connecting heaven and earth. Following it meant moving in harmony with the world above and below. Stealth hunts at night were a test of both patience and nerve. Light meant exposure, so they relied on shadows. Hunters wore natural camouflages: mud, ash, leaves, anything that broke up their outline under moonlight. They moved slowly, timing every motion with wind gusts or animal noises to mask their presence. When the night was still, they froze. Even breathing was controlled, slow and shallow to avoid drawing attention. Predators like wolves or mountain lions hunted the same way, and tribes learned from watching them. They studied animal patterns, mimicking their silence and rhythm until they became part of the same ecosystem: unseen, unheard, unstoppable. To locate prey, hunters used not their eyes but their ears and intuition. A snapping twig might reveal a deer stepping cautiously through brush. The faint splash of water signaled a beaver or muskrat. Echoes carried differently depending on terrain. Valleys deepened sound, while open plains made it drift. Skilled hunters could estimate distance and direction just from how sound bounced around them. They often worked in teams, positioning themselves in wide arcs to corner animals by sound rather than sight. When the time came to strike, they already knew exactly where the prey stood, even in complete darkness. What's even more fascinating is how their coordination worked without words. Talking wasn't an option. One misplaced whisper could ruin everything. Instead, they communicated through subtle gestures, clicks of the tongue, or the faint hoot of an owl, a signal easily mistaken for wildlife by outsiders. A short double click might mean move forward, a low whistle meant stop, and the rustle of a feather indicated ready. Each tribe developed its own silent language of movement that turned hunting into choreography, fluid, precise, and beautiful in its simplicity. Even when traveling, stealth was essential. At night, enemy tribes or predators could be anywhere, so groups moved like shadows across the landscape. They chose routes along rivers or valleys where natural sounds masked their presence. The tallest among them carried dry grass bundles, occasionally tossing them behind to erase footprints in soft ground. Children and elders walked in the center, surrounded by hunters who could respond instantly to any threat. Every movement was calculated: when to pause, when to listen, when to vanish completely if danger approached. They didn't leave trails by accident. They erased them by design. Some tribes took their night travel to the extreme, moving entire communities after sunset to avoid being seen. They'd pack supplies silently, extinguish fires with sand, and head out under moonlight. Camps were chosen not for convenience but for concealment, behind ridges, inside forests, or near water sources that could reflect enough light to see without fire. Once camped, they avoided sudden noises, using animal calls to signal safety or danger. It was an entire culture of controlled quiet, where survival depended on discipline rather than luck. Modern soldiers still study these movement tactics today, and many special operations units unknowingly follow techniques developed centuries ago by people who lived without electricity or night vision. They also understood something modern hikers often forget: how easily the mind plays tricks in darkness. Shadows shift, branches resemble faces, and sounds become monsters when fear takes over. To conquer that, Native Americans practiced mental calmness as rigorously as physical skill. Before long journeys or hunts, elders would lead grounding rituals: steady breathing, listening to the wind, focusing on the heartbeat, to synchronize body and mind. When fear disappeared, perception expanded. The forest wasn't an enemy anymore. It was an ally, revealing exactly what you needed to know if you were quiet enough to listen. Even their animals learned to move through darkness with them. Dogs were trained not to bark but to growl softly when danger approached. Horses were guided with touch instead of reins or voice, responding to subtle leg movements or body shifts. That kind of connection between human and animal made them nearly invisible in the wild. Imagine an entire group gliding silently across a moonlit plain. No torchlight, no sound, only the rhythm of footsteps blending with the wind. That's not myth. That's what real night mastery looked like. It's easy to think they had some mystical sixth sense, but it was pure training. Years of repetition built awareness that most of us can't imagine. They learned how to use the darkness, not fear it. Every tree, every sound, every breath of air told them where to go and what to avoid. It wasn't just movement, it was survival turned into art. And here's the thing, you can still practice it today. Next time you step outside at night, turn off the flashlight. Let your eyes adjust. Feel the air, listen to what's alive around you. The world doesn't disappear in darkness. It just becomes quieter, sharper, more real. If you try walking through a forest like this, drop a comment below and tell me how long you think you'd last before panic hits. And if you're into rediscovering the skills that once kept our ancestors alive, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, we're only getting started, because the night still has secrets left to tell. When the world went dark, most people froze, blinded by fear, by silence, by the sheer size of the unknown. But for Native Americans, night wasn't something to fear. It was a living world, full of sound, rhythm, and direction. The darker the world became, the more clearly they saw. They didn't fight the darkness, they became part of it. Their eyes were only one tool among many. The real secret was awareness, a complete fusion of sight, hearing, smell, and memory. Long before anyone talked about night vision, they trained their bodies to collect every signal the earth offered. They knew that darkness doesn't remove the light, it just shifts where you find it. The first and most trusted guide was the sky. The stars weren't decoration. They were maps. The Lakota called the Milky Way the Spirit Road. The Pawnee saw it as the reflection of rivers on earth, and the Navajo believed the stars marked the path of the holy people. Every bright point above them had meaning, direction, timing, story. The North Star, unmoving, told them where home lay. The movement of constellations told them how far they had traveled. The night sky wasn't random, It was order written in silver. A good traveler could look up once, trace a line between stars, and know exactly where he stood in the world. But when clouds swallowed the heavens or the forest canopy blocked the view, the sky gave way to the land. They listened. The sound of air moving through grass told them which way the wind blew. The smell of water carried through valleys long before it was visible. Wet soil cooled the skin while dry ground reflected warmth. A shift in temperature meant a river or cave nearby. Each of these tiny signs built a mental map that could be read without light, a navigation system as accurate as any modern compass. Sound became another kind of vision. At night, when sight grew weak, the ears took over. Hunters could hear a rabbit breathe, a raccoon's claws scratch against bark, or the faint trickle of a stream beyond the trees. Echoes told them distance. In valleys, the air carried sound farther. In thick forest, the noise died faster. Some scouts would softly click their tongues or tap two stones, listening to the returning sound bounce back, a natural form of sonar that painted the terrain in their minds. A single echo could tell them whether they stood before an open field, a wall of trees, or the hollow mouth of a canyon. They didn't just hear, they visualized through sound. Fire, when used, was treated with reverence. It wasn't light, it was a tool. They understood something we often forget. The brighter the flame, the less you see beyond it. Instead of large bonfires that blinded and exposed them, they used small, low fires hidden in shallow pits or behind stone walls. The glow was soft, the shadows deep, and eyes could adjust between the two worlds, the world of flame and the world of dark. Sometimes hunters used fire's reflection to track movement. The flicker against a distant rock or water surface could reveal an animal crossing far away. The dance between fire and darkness was something they mastered, not feared. Shadows themselves became a kind of language. When the moon was bright, every hill, every branch, every figure cast a line that spoke of direction and distance. The sharper the shadow, the clearer the air. The longer it stretched, the closer dawn was. Movement in shadow revealed what even silence tried to hide. A sudden shift of black against silver light might mean a predator stalking nearby. A soft blur could be a deer brushing through tall grass. They learned to read these silent movements as easily as we read written words. But the real magic of night navigation came from animals. The forest always spoke through them. When owls stopped calling, something big was moving. When crickets and frogs went silent, danger was near. When coyotes howled in specific rhythms, they were marking territory or announcing prey. Every tribe had elders who could interpret these signals instantly. To them, silence wasn't absence, it was warning. The world never stopped talking, it just changed its tone. Travelers left subtle signs for those who followed. A blade of grass bent northward meant, this way. Pebbles arranged in a crescent indicated water nearby. A broken branch, angled toward the sky, pointed to safe campgrounds. None of these markers stood out to the untrained eye, but to those who knew, the land became a conversation between generations. Every step carried meaning, every trail told a story. And it wasn't only the hunters who learned this. Children were taught to see in darkness from the time they could walk. At dusk, elders would take them outside and tell them to sit quietly until their eyes adjusted. No torches, no fear. They were told to count how many sounds they could recognize. Insects, birds, flowing water, wind. Then they'd be asked to point to where those sounds came from. The lesson wasn't just hearing, it was awareness. Over time, the children learned to see with their ears, smell the rain before it fell, and feel the direction of wind by how it touched one side of their face more than the other. The night became familiar, not frightening. Even food played a role in night vision. Some tribes believed that certain plants sharpened the eyes, blueberries, wild carrots, and liver from freshly hunted animals. These foods are rich in vitamin A, which modern science now knows is essential for night vision. Without understanding the chemistry, they already knew the effect. They didn't just rely on instinct. Their diet supported the senses that kept them alive. Training wasn't just about technique, it was about calm. Darkness tests the mind more than the body. Fear blurs perception, makes noise louder, and turns shadows into monsters. Before any night journey or hunt, tribes performed grounding rituals, slow breathing, rhythmic drumming, or soft chanting that synchronized heartbeats and steadied nerves. Once your body matched the rhythm of the night, fear lost its grip. When the forest's pulse matched your own, there was no difference between you and the world around you. You were home even in total blackness. There's an old Cherokee story about a young hunter who feared the dark. His grandfather told him, "The night only blinds those who stare at it. Look sideways and you'll see everything." The boy practiced for months, learning to see movement through the corners of his eyes, where rods, the cells responsible for night vision, are most sensitive. Modern science proves this is true. Peripheral vision is stronger in low light. What the old man taught by intuition we now confirm in laboratories. They understood human biology long before it had a name. To modern people this all sounds mystical. But for them it was practical, tested, and real. They didn't have technology, they had trust in their senses. They didn't fight the dark, they partnered with it. Every sound, every whisper of wind, every shimmer of starlight became part of a network that guided them safely through the black. And maybe, just maybe, that's the skill we've lost most. The ability to move through uncertainty without panic. The ability to slow down, breathe, and trust what's already inside us. If you were dropped in a forest right now with no light, do you think you could make it till morning? Tell me in the comments. And if you're as fascinated by these lost survival skills as I am, hit that like button and subscribe. There's so much more waiting in the dark to be rediscovered. When dawn finally touched the horizon, most people sighed in relief. But for Native Americans, sunrise wasn't victory over darkness. It was the closing of a sacred chapter. The night wasn't an obstacle they had conquered. It was a teacher that revealed things daylight could never show. And those lessons were far too valuable to lose. That's why, for centuries, entire communities built traditions around preserving the ability to see, move, and think clearly in the dark. Children didn't just stumble into these skills, they were guided into them. The learning began early, almost as soon as a child could walk. Elders would bring them outside at dusk, sit them in silence, and tell them to listen. No one explained what to listen for. That was part of the test. The forest would hum, crickets, frogs, wind, distant water, and slowly as the night deepened, the noise would separate into layers. When the child could name each one, they were ready for the next step, walking without light. The goal wasn't to be fearless. It was to build trust in their senses until fear no longer mattered. You couldn't control darkness, but you could understand it. Every tribe had its own initiation. Among the Plains people, young scouts were sent alone for short night walks, tasked with finding specific landmarks by touch or sound. In the Pacific Northwest, apprentices learned to paddle canoes guided only by the reflection of starlight on moving water. The Navajo practiced what they called shadow tracing, following moonlight patterns across rocks until they could predict where shadows would fall before they appeared. These weren't games. They were life or death lessons disguised as challenges. The children who returned calm and confident weren't just praised. They were trusted with bigger responsibilities, hunting, guarding, guiding others through night terrain. Vision wasn't the only thing they trained. Breathing mattered just as much. Quick, shallow breaths echoed and revealed your position to anyone nearby. Controlled, slow breathing kept you silent, alert, and calm. Warriors practiced inhaling through the nose, exhaling through the mouth in rhythm with their steps, matching their heartbeat to the world around them. Some traditions used quiet songs or rhythmic hums to regulate pulse and focus. At first it sounded like prayer, and in some ways it was. These techniques kept the mind anchored in reality when everything around you vanished into shadow. Night awareness wasn't limited to hunters or warriors. Women and elders used it for gathering herbs, attending to fires, or tending to infants without disturbing the calm of the village. They could navigate between shelters by the faint glow of embers or the cool breeze that marked open paths between dwellings. Even simple domestic tasks became acts of precision and respect for darkness. The night was a shared responsibility. Everyone learned to read it, move through it, and keep its balance intact. There was deep spirituality tied to these practices. The darkness wasn't evil, it was sacred. In many native belief systems, the world was born from darkness. Light came after, not as a destroyer but as a balance. To walk confidently at night meant understanding creation itself. It was said that those who feared darkness could never truly understand life, because life begins in shadow, in the womb, beneath the earth, behind closed eyes. The ability to see in darkness wasn't about eyesight. It was about perception, awareness, and humility before the natural order. Tribes also developed remarkable social codes to preserve this knowledge. Stories were told around dim fires about legendary night travelers who could track enemies or game across impossible distances without light. These tales weren't just entertainment. They were mnemonic tools coded with practical lessons. A story about a warrior hearing the whisper of a snake in the grass taught the importance of silence. A legend about a hunter who followed starlight through storm clouds taught how to trust other senses when one failed. Through narrative, survival wisdom was passed down safely and memorably, generation after generation. Scientific studies today show that constant exposure to darkness improves the sensitivity of rod cells in the human eye, the same cells responsible for night vision. Native peoples didn't need laboratories to prove that. Their way of life was proof enough. By avoiding artificial light, their eyes adapted naturally. Campfires were dim, homes shadowed, and night journeys frequent. Over time, their pupils expanded faster, their retinas adjusted deeper, and their brains became skilled at interpreting faint contrasts of movement and texture. They literally evolved sharper night perception through lifestyle and discipline. Modern humans, by contrast, have blinded themselves with brightness. City lights, screens, and lamps keep us from ever letting our eyes learn again. If you've ever stepped from a bright room into darkness and felt that instant panic, that blindness, you felt the cost of constant light. Our ancestors didn't have that problem. Their eyes were fluent in both worlds. But their genius went beyond biology. They trained memory just as intensely. A traveler might study terrain by daylight, memorizing rock shapes, tree patterns, or the direction of rivers. At night, even when sight vanished, that map lived vividly in their minds. They navigated by memory as much as by sense. Some elders could walk miles through pitch-black woods and arrive exactly where they intended, guided by scent, feel, and intuition honed over decades. That level of spatial awareness bordered on supernatural, but it was the result of patient repetition, not magic. As the centuries passed and artificial light crept into the world, much of this quiet mastery began to fade. Yet fragments remain, in the songs of elders, the whispered lessons of trackers, the rituals that still teach children to pause and listen before they step. Some modern native communities are reviving these teachings as both cultural preservation and survival training. Because when power grids fail, flashlights die, and panic spreads, those who can still move confidently in the dark will hold a kind of power the modern world has forgotten. It's strange, isn't it? We built cities that never sleep, yet we've lost the ability to truly see the night. They lived with nothing but starlight and shadow, and somehow they saw everything that mattered. So maybe it's worth asking ourselves, what have we traded for comfort? What skills have we let atrophy because we think we no longer need them? If a single blackout could erase your sense of safety, maybe the darkness isn't the danger, maybe it's the reminder. If you'd walk a mile through total darkness to relearn what your ancestors already knew, then you belong here. Tap that like button, hit subscribe, and tell me in the comments, do you think you could trust your senses again if the lights went out tonight?